Joseph Minicozzi and Chuck Marohn are in here this morning. This is part of No Hospital Downtown, and it's a big day today. You guys are calling this Battle for Our City today, right? Jim Brock is taking this. I can't believe it, but he's going to step aside and allow these guys to take over. Joe and Chuck, good morning, guys. Thanks for coming in.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having us.
So why obviously you're brought in by this group that doesn't want the hospital downtown. So I can't imagine you're going to pop up and say, well, I'm looking at this now. I think this would be a perfect spot. So with that said, make the case. Why no hospital in downtown Utica? Joe, you want to start?
Well, sure. Yeah. First of all, I'm a native of Rome, New York. And if you want to see a nice silver bullet project, please come visit Rome.
Yeah.
What happened to its downtown? So I think a lot of it is thinking things through, making sure that you have a good plan before you act, make sure that you penciled it out and done the math on whether or not it's going to work before you make decisions, and not just wholesale bomb your downtown with non-taxable infrastructure.
And Chuck?
I think one of the things that we see in general around the country is that our old, neglected, often labeled blighted downtowns are actually some of the most financially successful properties in our cities. And all they need is a little bit of love. They just need a little bit of TLC to get to the next level. What we have seen in the past, whether it's the 1960s urban renewal projects, the 1970s, big pedestrian mall kind of projects, we see these massive interventions to go in and try to solve the problems of the downtown, when really the cities that we see around the country being the most successful with their downtown are the ones that embrace an incremental approach. How do we take what we've got here, which even though it may look like it's not the shiniest new kind of part of town, it still is financially really, really successful today. How do we take that and make it a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better? And instead of the big mega silver bullet project to try to save everything and change everything all at once, which kind of fits with our American mentality of how to do things, that meat and potatoes, block and tackle, let's roll up our sleeves and do the hard work incrementally, not only is something that we can all do, but financially it produces huge results.
So if I always talk about this little analogy, if you have 10 neighborhoods that really need work, and you remove 2 of them that you don't have to worry about, it allows you to focus on the 8 neighborhoods that really need it. So if you can fix that area quickly, it allows you to embrace Bleecker Street. It allows you to go after Genesee Street. It allows you to go into West Utica.
Hold on. I want to challenge you on that. Because why would you give up on those 2 neighborhoods?
Well, I don't think you're giving up on the neighborhood. I think you'd be investing in that neighborhood. And then, remember, this is a city that used to be 100,000 people. We're at 60 now.
Okay, right. Then remove the edges. Don't remove your heart. You know, it's just, if you stretch yourself out too much, contract. Don't go in and bomb your downtown. This is your most fertile soil. This is your biggest opportunity where you can have the most entrepreneurs with the most entrepreneurial activity. Just look backward to what Utica was when you had immigrants showing up, creating small businesses. They weren't doing mega projects. My family created bakeries, pastry shops, food. They created small businesses with lots of people employed in them, and all of that's gone. And so to just remove a whole section of your town, particularly your heart, is
and when was
crazy.
that done in Rome, by the way?
The 70s.
So
when I was a kid.
Right when we were really good at, we knew urban and economic development.
Have you been to the fort? Do you remember the Living Bridge? Do you remember the pedestrian mall? Did you visit it?
Listen, this is all over, right? I mean, this is, look at Oneonta. If you've been to Oneonta, that Main Street exists, and it's an old-fashioned Main Street that it's a small little city.
It's not old-fashioned. This is common sense. This is how you build cities. You look at the history of human civilization.
Well, I'm saying that in a positive way. I'm not saying it in a negative way.
But still, there's your lessons.
If you look at Little Falls, went through the urban development in the 70s, and Herkimer, Rome went through it. All of these communities did lose their Main Street. But haven't we learned from that when we put up these buildings? they are far better aesthetically. They're not these crazy modern things that were put together back in the 70s and 60s.
I think that's a seductive kind of thing we'd like to tell ourselves. The reality is that the way places that work were assembled was incrementally over time. Today, we like to build things in huge chunks. We like to, redevelop 6 blocks at a time.
Right.
And what we find is that we can create in the very short term kind of the illusion of success and prosperity. But you also have to remember that, 20 years from now, that entire 6 blocks will all be 20 years old at the same time.
Right.
It's all going to start to go bad at the same time. You have kind of a full, sink or swim binary outcome. Where when you do things incrementally, when you focus more on the fine grain, what you get is more of an ecosystem as opposed to one big giant thing that you sink or swim on.
There are some buildings there that are in rough shape.
And you can fix them.
You can.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trained as an architect.
I'm waiting for that to happen. We've been waiting for 50 years for that to happen.
Well, there's lots of things that go into that. There's people that speculate. There's people that do demolition by neglect. They don't fix the building. You don't penalize your quality of architecture in your community. Can you replace that building? What would it take to replace some of the brick buildings? I was just showing Chuck pictures of buildings with the family names on top of them. Incredible brick construction. Fix it.
Yeah.
It just if there's a historic preservationist that can tell me that these buildings are unfixable, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that we see is in communities like this where there's kind of a specter of, we're going to have some massive, Albany-led kind of intervention down here. What it does is it just suppresses innovation. I mean, why would you go in, buy one of these buildings, pour your heart and your sweat into making it better when you're just going to get like the low dollar from an eminent domain case?
Yeah.
So in a sense, we have stifled that type of innovation and then looked and said, well, hey, the innovation's not happening. If you go to other parts of the country and you look where instead of taking the mega project approach, they've said, we're going to very intentionally take an incremental approach. What you see is that small investors come in. These are great investment opportunities, even though the buildings, like you say, look run down. They're solid buildings. I mean, they're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
These are great places for entrepreneurs, the bootstrappers that we like to nostalgize in this country, to come in and get a start and make something better of it. And actually not only build wealth for the community, but build their own equity. These are great, great opportunities for people.
Do you have, because we've been told, depending on who you're talking to, that hospitals downtown do not do well. Do you have any evidence of that? Because there are hospitals that do well in a downtown setting, and there are hospitals that don't do well.
I'm from Minnesota. I flew in last night from central Minnesota. We have the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, and one of the things that Rochester has realized in the last couple of years is that the hospital in the downtown has really been a negative for them. You can say it's a great destination. They bring people from all over the world there. It's a world-class, successful facility, but the land around it is barren. It doesn't have a very good interaction with the surrounding community. The state of Minnesota is now in the process of subsidizing Rochester to the tune of something like $5 billion. It's a huge sum of money to try to keep the Mayo Clinic there and change the downtown so that it is, they're calling it the destination medical center, so that it's more of a place.
And in fairness, the architects that are planning this facility for downtown have really addressed that, and they talked about building a facility that is going to fit well with the current structures, the landscape of the city, but also one that breathes into the community. That's what they're saying. What was done years ago versus what's being done today are two different things.
I think the challenge you have, and we see this in the Destination Medical Center in Rochester, is that the business model of a hospital is not very permeable in a sense. There's not a lot of interaction with the surrounding neighborhood the way there would be an ecosystem of small businesses. If you go to a hospital, you're not really dependent on the thing a block or two away. There's no thing, sucking you out or pushing you out in that direction. So the business model itself of a big, whether it's a hospital or a convention center, any type of a big kind of mega project, they tend to not be very permeable to the surrounding landscape, and that's where you don't get those ancillary secondary benefits that people like to speak of.
I want to add this. John says the Photo Fair building has had the same broken window glass on the sidewalk since I was in Cub Scouts. Please ask these two guys to buy the building. Where are we going to find the buyers? Where do the buyers come from?
This is a picture of an old department store. Mm-hmm. Does that look blighted?
I really can't tell what you're setting me up for.
I'm not setting you up for anything. I'm just going to show you a picture.
Well, it does look blighted. Yeah. Yes.
So that was the 1990s. That's a 1996 Chevy Celebrity right there. That's now one of the top hotels in downtown Asheville. Buildings are opportunity to fix them.
But that's not my question.
Okay, there was a broken window on there. You see the broken windows?
No. It's not about the broken window. It's about we've been waiting for a long time.
Yeah.
Where do these people that are ready to, because your guys aren't buying the buildings.
Right.
So who is going to buy these buildings and fix these buildings up and turn them into viable hotels like you're talking about?
One of the things that I see in upstate New York a lot, and this is my 5th trip to this part of the country, the way that the state of New York and really New York cities in general approach economic development sidelines a lot of private capital. We do here in this part of the country large projects. We get a lot of subsidy for them. We deal with big players. What we have not fully embraced are the small, little, incremental approaches. And the effect of that is that we've sidelined a lot of capital. I said earlier, why would I go down and invest in this neighborhood right now today? We have a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's blighted. Thus, we need this big mega project. Thus, why would I be the one to go in and pioneer recapturing and reclaiming those buildings? Even though they're cheap, they're affordable, they'd be a great place to go. What we have done with our approach here is sidelined a lot of private capital. And now we're lamenting that, hey, where's the private capital coming in? Well, our approach has shoved it to the sidelines.
You've also alienated entrepreneurs that could be opportunity, that could grow into those buildings, that could have that opportunity.
And what has alienated them? Has it been
would you invest in that area?
But you have to understand. You have to, and I know you're from Rome.
Yeah, I want to hear it.
But I'm just going to give you my story. I've been through the rallies. I've been through the we're going to save downtown stuff. I've been through it all. 3 different phases of this, and it all failed. Jim, you know what I'm talking about. We're going to save downtown. And then it just fizzles.
Okay, let's go back to that. Those are all
where were these investors 50 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, before?
Okay, chill out. Yeah, name those projects. They're all silver bullet projects. We're going to do a next office building.
It wasn't. It was we're saving downtown. We're a Utica pride. It was all this stuff. As a citizen of this region and somebody who works here and lives here, I'm tired of it. So it becomes very appealing when they come in and say, in one quick brushstroke, we're gonna
solve every problem,
transform the look of downtown. It becomes very appealing when we have been promised and let down over and over again.
Let me say that I empathize with that. And, in the same way that I empathize with the, skinny, geeky kid trying to make the football team who gets the steroid and says, I can beef up real quickly and solve all these problems. Yeah. It's a false kind of seductive thing. And we intuitively understand that. I do think it's a valid argument to say, hey, in the last 20, 30 years, where has this been? We've been, talking about this. Where's it happened? I think we have to step back and look in this country today, a shift that is taking place. Cities that were in decline are now on the ascendancy. I mean, we can look back at New York 30 years ago and compare it to where New York City is today, and we see a completely different city with a completely different mindset. What we are recognizing around this country is that these places that we have largely walked away from, largely disinvested, run highways through the middle and cut these ecosystems apart. These places are not only financially really productive, but provide a lot of opportunity, a lot of job growth, a lot of housing, a lot of things that made them great cities in the first place. And so I think if we get locked on the notion that the last 30 years have not been kind to our downtowns, I think to be fair to that, we have to go back 70, 80, 100 years and say, this was the way this part of the country became great.
Right.
Why did we walk away from that in the first place? How do we start to get that back?
Well, we didn't walk away. Everybody else walked away. We lost all of our industry. I mean, this is the typical Northeast. You know, I mean, if you're from here, we watched corporations and plants shut down a manufacturing community that doesn't manufacture anymore. There are 50 other cities across the country that go through the same thing that we've been through. I want to talk about just some facts here that I want your comment on. We'll break and we'll come back and have you answer. And if you guys want to, people would like to call in, 315-736-0186. We'll take some calls. I know Bernie's waiting. Bernie, I'm going to get to you in a second. But I want you to think about the reality, and that is that Governor Cuomo wants this thing downtown. And I'm not sure the money's coming without it going downtown. And the reason he wants a big, gigantic swoop and cleanup is because it's going to make him look good if he has any additional aspirations down the road. So the reality is, if it doesn't go downtown, we may not get a new hospital. We'll talk about that when we come right back.